Welcome to Discograffiti's 2025 Patreon membership superdrive. Now more than ever with our Beach Boys series underway, much of which will be living exclusively on our Patreon platform, this is the time to join. And I'm going to make it super easy for you. At the lieutenant or major tier, in addition to 3 or 4 shows a week, access to the gigantic archive of Patreon back episodes, and your backstage pass, you'll also get the following. An onboarding call with me during which you'll tell me all your ideas on how to make the podcast you'd like to hear. And whether I use all, some, or none of your ideas, I'll have listened closely and most importantly gotten to know you. Plus, 3 months into your membership, you'll be eligible to appear on the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. That's right, an entire episode all about you, your band, your band's album, your band's tour, or whatever other cool stuff you might be up to. And not only do we make the episode, we promote it for you too. Last but not least, you'll receive a completely free digital copy of Metal Machine Muzak, which otherwise costs $11. Metal Machine Muzak is Discograffiti's double album Lou Reed tribute featuring 16-minute pieces by Lou Barlow from Sebadoh and Dino Jr., Corey Hansen from Wand, Mark Robinson from Unrest, and W. Cullen Hart from Olivia Tremor Control. Please tell all your music-obsessive friends. In fact, if your friends do sign up, be sure to email me at info@discograffiti.com and let me know who they are, because I'll be sending you an additional surprise gift on top of everything else as a token of my gratitude. And now, without further ado, the greatest music commentary podcast in all the land, I bring you Discograffiti.
I say to him once in a while, do you really know the impact that you've had? Do you take that in? Do you really know what you've done? And he goes, every day. So that's a big thing for him to say. You know, what goes through this man's mind every day? That's one of the things. He is so appreciative of everyone that has listened and loved and learned and grown from his music.
Welcome to another episode of Discograffiti's wildly in-depth Beach Boys series and Your Dreams Come True, where Brian Wilson freaks like you and me get our chance to delve deep into the barely believable history and prodigious discography of my favorite band of all time, and also coincidentally the best, along with a slew of over 45 top-shelf guests, ranging from musicians inspired by their work, family members, documentary directors, songwriting collaborators, Beach Boys authors, producers, touring band members, and for good measure, some of the Beach Boys themselves. I'm your host, Dave Gebrow, and special thanks goes out to Jeff McAvoy and especially co-producer Dennis Dyken, without whom this series would not have happened. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on Carnie Wilson. Psst. This is part 3 of the longest interview Carnie Wilson's ever given, and on a subject she rarely speaks about, her father's band. She picked her 7 favorite Beach Boys releases, plus 1 solo, which taken together forms a patchwork quilt that defines the essence of Dad as she knows him. Keep in mind, more than 50% of Discograffiti's Beach Boys series will be available exclusively on our Patreon platform, as I support a wife and a 6-year-old son with Discograffiti as my sole source of income. So if you're not a subscriber on the lieutenant or major tier, you'll only be getting a fraction of the story. Here's just a few of the many things Carnie and I discuss in this podcast. Her favorite Beach Boys album of all time, the mixed feelings that were brought up by the 1976 Brian's Back campaign, the whirlwind launch of Carnie's own career in Wilson Phillips, and how that helped in putting her past with Dad to bed, her feelings on 15 Big Ones, Love You, Brian Wilson's self-titled 1988 solo debut, and in a director's cut exclusive, 1979's LA Light album, and most importantly, the farting habits of the Wilson clan. If you're a Beach Boys superfan like me, you'll want to turn this free version off right now and opt for the director's cut of this episode on our Patreon page, which features 10 additional minutes of essential material. And you can find it in our Patreon shop for mere pennies at patreon.com/discograffiti/shop. Or better yet, just subscribe for access to the complete versions of all our shows. I recommend the Lieutenant tier at the very least so you can access those director's cuts, but the major tier is what you want if you want it all. And I'm covering a bunch of these Beach Boys records on the major tier. Even if you're on the fence, just head over there because it's finally free to become a basic member. Coming up, we've got Al Jardine, Marilyn Wilson, Don Was, Ginger Blake, Pete Buck, Ira Kaplan from Yo La Tengo, The Cars' Elliot Easton, Sonic Boom, Don Fleming, Marshall Crenshaw, Lenny Kaye, The Righteous Brothers Bill Medley, Russ Titleman, Jerry Schilling, Greg Jacobson, Christian Love, Gary Griffin, David Beard, Probing Gregory, John Cowsill, David Leaf, Don Randy, John Stebbins, Rob Bonfilio, Wyatt Funderburk, Stephen Kalinich, Matt Jardine, Fred Vale, Sam Parker, Brent Wilson, Mark Lynette, Alan Boyd, Carly Minoz, and many more. So don't miss out. Open up your listening app right now and subscribe. And away we go then. And here's an interesting quote from your dad as well. It was a little scary because the other Beach Boys and I had drifted apart personality-wise. A lot of the guys had developed new personalities through meditation. It was a bit scary and shaky, but we went into the studio with the attitude that we had to get it done. It was originally supposed to be a double album called Group Therapy in a nod to Landy. And album 1 was going to be covers, and album 2 was going to be the original stuff, and it became 15 Big Ones. There was just a boatload of material from that time.
So much material. And I mean, I didn't know that part at all. I just remember being at Bellagio and having the cover and looking at all the rings and seeing each Beach Boy, their faces in the rings.
Mike said something interesting about that album cover. He said the images of Brian, Dennis, Carl, Al, and me in 5 interlocking circles could have been a metaphor for 5 bandmates united in common purpose, or 5 guys living in their separate worlds. With us, it was both.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I think he's right. I didn't use the word back then as pop. When I heard It's Okay, I went, they're in a new territory right now. It felt different to me. It's Okay felt different to me.
Good or bad?
Good. They opened up a little more and it was like a little grittier, like the backgrounds.
You know what's funny about that? It sounds like Mike making fun of his own voice.
It totally does. And you know that Dad was like, hey, Mike, I want you to go, yeah. You know? We used to laugh so hard at that, but I couldn't believe how low he would sing. But then if you listen to the background vocals when they come back in, it's like they were pushing this, like it was like gritty. I just imagine Carl, it was a little more like in your face, and I loved it. It was really cool. I was like, we've opened up a can here. And of course, rock and roll music, I was so excited because Mom was singing on it. Mom's on this album.
I didn't know she was on that.
She's on rock. She's like, rockin' and roll. If you listen to the rockin' and roll. Rockin' and roll. You hear Mom. I was like, yay, Mom. You know, you can hear her. It was so cute. I was so happy that they used her on it. And of course, Hadaphonia.
I love Hadaphonia.
Oh, God. And I love that my Auntie Dee Dee was a co-writer. Never saw royalties over the years. They fucked her so bad. It was so unfair. Just so unfair. Poor Diane got the short end of the stick. And really, Diane she coordinated all their sessions in the studio, did a lot of work for the Beach Boys, and never got fucking credit. She never got the credit, and that upset me, you know. But Hadaphonia, I knew that version too, but I also loved Hadaphonia by Spring. They also had a beautiful version.
You know, that's another one of those seemingly very simple, innocuous tunes
Yeah,
It's actually kind of complicated.
it
And that
is.
round part where it's you is
Oh,
gorgeous. Really
incredible.
heartbreaking, actually. And your mom on the fade also is really a beautiful touch.
Just the chord changes are beautiful. Just the simple lyric of had to phone you just to talk to you. But once again, it's like this simple lyric paired with these layered harmonies and chords and special melodies that just made the Beach Boys what they were. But this was also a time that Dad started smoking heavily.
Oh
And
man, can you hear it? What do you think about his? I mean, look, his singing fits the album and the material. I only know this record as the way it is.
of course,
But in certain key moments,
yeah,
I think it actually works for the material. Like Just Once in My Life, when he goes into and baby, and his voice kind of cracks. And
totally.
there's something about the way that it works for the yearning feeling that he's trying to get
That's
into
right.
the music that
That's right.
adds to it. But it's
Oh,
also a little terrifying to listen to him sing.
it was scary for me too as the listener because I heard it too. But at the same time, it was like he was smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, at least. But he would also like smoke half a cigarette, throw it out, and then immediately light another one. And we were desperately trying to get him to quit. But like he was so hoarse. And yes, it did work, but that's also the producers, the producer that decides that's the take I'm going to keep. Because there are moments when he's not as raspy and he's singing, and they didn't have to keep that particular tape where he was extra hoarse. He could have had a half a liter of water and had a cough lozenge or whatever, and then decided to sing again. They would have had a clearer take. But that's the take that they chose. I don't think his voice sounded only like that.
Carl said that, here, I'll just quote him. He said, once we had finished a certain batch of songs, Brian said, that's it, put it out. That's why the album sounds unfinished. Brian just wanted to do one cut and capture the moment rather than working on something. I believe that Brian was consciously underproducing the album, and that was his choice. We deferred to him. But when we voted to do it that way with those particular songs, I left the studio right there on the spot because I was very disenchanted.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was frustrated with Dad, and Dad was impatient and wasn't in the mood. He was in a weird place, I think, mentally, and I just think that he felt the creativity, but I think his mind was on other things, period.
What do you think about the Brian's Back campaign?
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, I remember being in concert and someone holding up a big, big poster, Brian's back. And it was like, I remember them screaming.
How did you feel about that?
I felt mixed emotions. I felt sad. I felt embarrassed. I felt relieved. I felt proud. I don't know. It was a weird time for me too. So I don't really know how I felt. Brian's back. I was glad he came back, but I don't think he fully came back. I think
But he wasn't, yeah, that's the thing, is like he wasn't,
was.
yeah, because I mean, just look at him on the album cover. He was back, but only because there was a picture of him.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think he gave what he could, going through what he was going through internally, and who knows what that was. I mean, that was like right before they got that my parents got divorced, and so it was a rocky time. What else? Susie Cincinnati was a lot of fun. I loved, Al had a vibe. And I felt bad because I wanted Al to sort of interject more, but they let him interject once in a while. I think he also got short end of the stick a lot of the time.
I think this is one of his better songs. Dennis called Susie Cincinnati a silly piece of shit.
What?
Yeah.
No! Fuck. That's not nice.
I like that song. I think that's one of the better songs on the record, actually.
Yeah.
And Back Home had a very long gestation. The original version is from 1963, and it was written when he was living with Bob Norberg.
Right.
Yeah.
Who was a dear, dear, dear man. Back Home was funny. Back Home had also that, like, I used to laugh at Dad's vocal. He goes, Ohio! Ohio! Well, I go bad. So it's like you laugh because it's funny because he just lets loose and he doesn't give a fuck. And I mean, I don't know any other like artists that you could like laugh at. Like we're laughing at his vocal, but it's actually fucking genius as well. He is just one of a kind.
He really is. But also, it takes effort on the part of the listener to actually align that this is the same guy that put Pet Sounds together single-handedly, who's singing in an unrecognizable way, producing in an unrecognizable way, and choosing material that's unrecognizable.
I mean, units, what good is the dawn? Into, I sing that same song.
Yeah.
But I love...
Gregorian chants were a real big thing, guys.
I know, Gregorian chants just so... It's so... Oh my God. I used to laugh. There's a piece in that, I think it was called The American Band. Was that?
Yeah.
To see Carl and Dennis and Dad crack each other up is like some of my favorite moments of all time. And occasionally, Justin, Carl's son, my cousin Justin, he'll send me little clips, reminding me how funny they were and how hard Dad used to make Uncle Carl laugh. And Carl had a great laugh. He would go like... he would have this laugh, and Dennis was, I always felt like Dennis was very afraid to express himself. I feel like he held back a lot. He was probably the one with the most demons of all. I really believe that. Truly, I do. Just so tragic. It's so sad that what happened. It's just so sad what happened. It's not fair. And I wish that he lived today because I think he would have worked through so much of his own pain. But I think a lot of his pain was about Dad. A lot of his pain was about his own dad. Once again, we're talking about my family.
And he was the guy who could deal with the water. The rest of them didn't know what they were doing.
That was his place. I mean, he found his peace in the ocean, and Dad was kind of like almost vicariously through that. You know what I mean? But Dennis is a whole other energy, and I often forget to acknowledge him. I acknowledge my angels all the time. I really do. I acknowledge my angels, and certain things will remind me of them. And I often speak to Carl in the car, and not often enough do I speak to Dennis. And sometimes I'll just say out loud, I'm sorry, Uncle Dennis, that I don't acknowledge you more, but I feel you. And I remember, I had almost like a crush on him. He was like my first crush. He was so handsome, and he had this beard and he was so gorgeous, and he would grab my hand. He used to get on his knees and grab my hand and kiss my hand. And I remember feeling his lips and his beard tickle my hand. And he would always kiss my hand and just give me so much love. That was Uncle Dennis.
And it's amazing to me because a guy who lived as rough as it seemed that he wanted to live so hard had such a tender soul, particularly on Carl and the Passion So Tough. His songs are unbelievably emotional. And 95% of his material was really like that. It was all weepies. There's some barn burners on Pacific Ocean Blue, but when I think of Dennis, I don't think of Got to Know the Woman. I think of Cuddle Up.
Yeah, there was something about the way he sang also, his actual voice itself pulled on their heartstrings, almost more than the other guys. First of all, he was so good looking, and they were all good looking to me. But Dennis had something, there was more mystery. So when you do hear his songs, that's when he would reveal himself. And it wasn't always happy. You're right. It wasn't always happy. I always felt a sadness. And I think Grandma Audrey felt that too. I think Grandma Audrey felt that sadness. And when Dennis died, she was never the same after that.
One thing I spoke with Don about, was when we were talking about the I Just Wasn't Made for These Times documentary, is the precious footage of Audrey from that movie. And especially when Carl and Brian and Audrey are around the piano, because I remember seeing it at that time. But then Carl being gone 3 years later, he got that footage really in the nick of time.
She had a soft spot for Carl. He was the young one, the baby. She called him the baby. But she loved all her boys equally. And she would say that, she would say that. I love all my boys equally. And her greatest joy ever was being on the side of the stage during the concerts. She just loved to be sitting in the chair on the side and going to the concerts. She loved it. She also loved slot machines and gambling, and I did too. I did too. She was always a winner. She won $8,000 jackpots. She was amazing.
Wow. She knew what she was doing.
She was a great farter too. We always farted together.
What would she eat that would...
I don't know, but she made good brisket, and we used to have parties. And Steve Korthoff's brother-in-law, he made the best guacamole ever. He would mince the onions. I'll never forget that. But like grandma, she would walk down the hall and she would have this little waddle, and then she would lift up her leg and she would just fucking crack a massive ripper.
It's so
and we
funny.
would be hysterical laughing. Oh, this is what made my dad laugh really hard the last time I saw him. I said, Dad, do you know what I used to do with Grandma Audrey? He would go, what? I said, I'd call Grandma and I would go, hi, Grandma, listen to this. And then I'd fart on the phone and I'd hear, and that was her laugh. My dad, he let out a cackle laugh. He laughed so hard. This was just a few weeks ago. And everybody around, we laughed for 15 minutes. He thought that was the funniest thing. Dad, I mean, we have this funny joke about farting in our family. I mean, we're very good farters, but who really talks about that stuff? But Dad used to lay in bed and lift up his leg and he would fart and he would go, whoops, I made a poopy. We would laugh.
I can't imagine a world where people aren't always talking about farts.
I know.
I mean, I may, just be stuck in a 12-year-old way of seeing things.
So am I.
I haven't outgrown that. I never will. But I love the idea of actually raising your leg when you fart. I got to start doing that. I got to make it far more obvious that I'm doing it.
Yeah, Grandma Audrey was really good at that.
So album number 6, you were 9 years old. And Al Jardine said the title of that album is really The Beach Boys Love Brian.
Oh, I think it's my favorite Beach Boy album. I'm just going to go on the record and say that. I don't know what it is.
Totally understandable. So for me, 15 Big Ones, I like it. On a 5-star scale, I would give it maybe 3.5 stars. But I think it's a dry run for Love You because I feel like the element of 15 Big Ones that I love, that it doesn't go all the way with it, Love You takes it all the way home. I mean...
Well, it was the intro to that. It was like they were going in that direction. You could feel that energy of certain synthesizers, and drum sounds, and it sort of continued into Love You, I think.
Well, talk about farts. I mean, the synth sound in these 2 records is very farty.
Very farty. And Let Us Go On This Way. I mean, I thought it was really interesting to start the record like that. It was like, is this spiritual? Like, God, please let us go on this way.
The very beginning where you hear, yeah, is that your dad?
No, I think that's Carl.
That is an amazing moment because it really is at the very beginning. What an intro to the record. You're almost knocked backwards by that.
You're knocked backwards and it's slightly abrasive and it's like, wait, what? Carl's vocal on this song is very strong and forceful, and you could see like the depths of what he could do. Really, really interesting stuff. And that's part of why I loved it, because I felt like he was really letting go.
This is when punk was really at its height, and there's almost nothing more punk than this record.
But also it was interesting the way they would go back to God, please let us go. And all of a sudden, like, you're in this, like, it's almost like tin cans. Then all of a sudden they're like little angels. God, please.
Yeah.
Such a trip. Now, I wonder if, because we used to love to roller skate. Wendy and I were obsessed with roller skating. And we would roller skate everywhere. So I loved roller skating child.
But is it about you then? I mean,
it might be, because I felt like it was when I was young.
There's an aspect of this record where people who don't get it, they are creeped out by a vaguely icky vibe on this, and I Want to Pick You Up. But I don't see it. I see it as so innocent that you'd have to not be a true fan to not get it and go there, because people looking at it like it's pedophilic when it's just a guy in the throes of actual innocence. That's what it seems like to me. I mean, what the fuck do I know? But it always struck me that way. Yeah.
I mean, wash your body and shampoo your hair, and then I'm going to make you sing. But I also love the interplay of Dad's vocal. And also, it's really funny the way he's like, I always laugh the way he's like, feed you breakfast from a little cup. Like the way he says cup, it always made me laugh. But then the payoff is she's going to sleep, little baby go to sleep at the end. I mean, fuck those vocals. And Darian, we love I Want to Pick You Up. And Darian, whenever I see Darian now, he always has to bust down the piano, I Want to Pick You Up, because we love it so much. It's such a dear song and so precious. And of course, I know it was written about Wendy and I. I just know it. Obviously it was. And it touches my heart and my soul. And it's very, very meaningful to me. So I also thought Mona was funny, because I used to laugh at Dennis's voice. It was very rough on this song.
Really rough, yeah.
Sort of reminded me of 15 Big Ones and Dad's sort of that hoarseness, you know.
Yeah, like some of the later performances of You Are So Beautiful on stage.
Absolutely, same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, but still I was like, oh yeah, this is the moment we get to hear, like, divert, we're going to Dennisland.
Right,
you know what I mean?
right,
that was
right.
that was my reaction. We're going to Dennisville, and that voice. And also I thought that Johnny Carson was hilarious.
That's just batshit crazy. It really
That's just fucking crazy.
Yeah. I know that Johnny Carson is not a joke, but what do you have to say to people who believe that it is? Johnny Carson himself said this is not a work of art. I mean, in a sense, it's almost like a dare, like, let's see if you can write a song about anything.
In a way that's possible, but I just don't get that feeling, because with the Beach Boys and certain songs, they're all gifts, okay? But certain lyrics, certain ways of singing, Vegetables, for instance, you could take any one of these songs where like nobody else was ever writing about it or singing it like that, and then say they were trying to do something. I think it was just crazy, off the wall visions and things that Dad was hearing. And that's what was on tape. I think he was, goddamn, of course I think he was serious. And I think he loved Johnny Carson.
It's one of the most out there songs ever. And then I think the swish after Johnny Carson is he puts a song on here that was originally written for Sunflowers. So his voice is as pure as the driven snow out of nowhere. It goes from this grunty, hoarse, I mean, talk about a shattering of continuity. And I love Good Time because it's like a totally wholesome song about a threesome. Oh, hi, I'm Dave Gebrow. I threw my career as a licensed hearing instrument specialist in the trash, sold my house, and moved to the East Coast with my wife and 5-year-old son in order to focus on making the ultimate weekly podcast for music obsessives thrive. But weekly wasn't enough for me, so I bumped it up to 4 shows a week. Becoming a subscriber to Discograffiti's Patreon gives you access to hundreds of exclusive episodes. As a 2-show-per-week private, you get the weekly show by and for our Patreon family, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. As a 3-show-a-week lieutenant, you'll get early release, ad-free, extended director's cuts of the main show. They're the shows as they were intended to be heard. Plus, you'll gain access to half the Patreon archive and the upcoming Beach Boys Behind the Mirror companion episodes, which will feature dozens of special guests from within the Beach Boys camp talking about and rating their music. But as a 4-show-per-week major, you'll be drowning in a flood of must-hear binge listening, because I'll be bombarding you with episodes about super cool bands that are too subterranean for free Fridays. It's like going to music college, but with a tuition that makes all kinds of sense. Plus, our entire Patreon archive is yours. Discograffiti's Top 10, our Buried Treasure show, Rock Cousteau, our Slag Off show, Queasy Listening, and the Private Press with Paul Major. And all that for the price of only a cup of coffee a week. Times are tough, you say? Fret not, because there's a $1 tier. Or you could just join as a basic member and buy episodes piecemeal from our Patreon shop. Don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not giving. Check out patreon.com/discograffiti to find the tier that's right for you. Once again, that's patreon.com/discograffiti.
It almost doesn't matter what the subject is. I still get the payoff of the harmony and the melodies. I'm appreciative of Off the Wall, Out of Left Field. We wouldn't have anything to talk about, would we? What would we talk about if it wasn't just a little bit different or a little bit weird? That's the coolness. That's their creativity.
Most people think that Pet Sounds is the most accurate reflection of your dad, but it's this, isn't it?
I agree with you 100%. 100%.
He wrote all the lyrics to this whole record. I mean, I'm really asking you because I don't know your dad, but he's working with an endless series of collaborators. Tony Asher wrote the lyrics. This is coming out of conversations. They're sitting around smoking weed, and Tony Asher is interpreting feelings. Yeah. But this is unguarded Brian Wilson, right?
No question, unguarded. And like I said, I really believe that Dad with each album that they've done, whatever his contribution was, is where he was at that time on that day. So if he walked in the studio and said, I want to do this and sing it this way, and that's it, that's what he envisioned. And everybody was kind of like, okay, Brian, whatever you say, because he did have such groundbreaking stuff in the past. They trusted him. That's his vision. So let him have it. So can you really say that Solar System is less genius than Wouldn't It Be Nice?
No. I mean, yeah, Solar System is unbelievably touching.
Those arrangements of those harmonies and vocals is some of the most beautiful things I've ever heard.
What do you think about The Night Was So Young?
Fuck.
From what I understand, that's pretty brutally honest about, some things that were happening outside of your parents' marriage. It seems like ludicrously personal to be putting on a record. As a member of the family, to have that kind of dirty laundry out there in public.
Yeah, I think that Dad was giving up on her, giving up her faith in him. I think this is when he realized that the marriage was probably going to end. I think this is when he was giving up because she was giving up. The love wasn't given up. But I think that, yeah, it is personal, and it is. But then again, he could have been writing this about an ex-girlfriend. How do we fucking know?
Apparently it's about Debbie Kyle.
Oh, God. That fucking cunt.
That's what I read.
Yeah, I mean, this is like just not good memories for me, because I remember her, and it just was not a good thing. And that's a personal thing, but fuck, that's ugly. I don't even want to be tainted with that, but that's about that. But I do want to say that it's one of my favorite vocals that Carl ever sang. The way he sang it was so tender. I also love how close up his vocal was. The next time I see Dad, I think I want to play this one for him. I want to play this song for him. I don't know why. I hope he doesn't think of Debbie Kyle if it's about her, but I definitely want to play this one for her, for him. I definitely want to play this for him next time I see him, because I don't know, there's something about it. I know he misses Carl a lot, but the song that blew my mind and was the most proud thing was hearing Let's Put Our Hearts Together. Yeah, of course. Wendy and I, as their children, just hearing it. And the shock of, I never had someone, I need someone to live with and be good to. The way she sang it. And then Dad's like, don't worry about your past loves. And if they never under. It's just the way he sang it. It was like so cute. It was so sweet. Let's put our hearts together and say we'll leave each other never. And then he's like, let's see what we can cook up between us. It's almost so humorous. Like, really? You chose that lyric? Let's see if we can cook up between us. Put our hearts together, leave each other never. Let's see if we can cook up between us. That's fucking funny. But it made me laugh as a kid.
That's good. Yes, good.
It made me laugh as a kid. It makes me laugh now because I never really knew the state of my parents' marriage then. I was just a kid at home with just a non-conventional everything, dysfunctional highs and lows, good and bad, all that shit. But like when I heard this song, it gave me hope that they will always love each other.
That's so great to hear because, as such a big fan of this record, I'm a very empathetic person. And I would hear this song and think of the kind of pain that it probably would drum up for you. And I'm so glad that it's actually a positive experience for you.
I listened to it, this morning again at like 7 o'clock in bed, and I played it and I was like, and I couldn't even cry. I was just like, oh, just like it, punch me in my gut, and I was just like, oh my God, it just brought back like listening to it in the living room. We had green carpet and I was just imagining myself like there. And then the sunflower stained glass window that my mom still has was always, on the side, and it let in the most beautiful light. And she still has that window. But I just remember sitting and listening to it and just like really loving that it was a duet. And being so surprised when I heard Mom, because Dad really loved her voice. I mean, let's talk about that for a second. When I asked him, who was your favorite singer in the world? He said, your mother. He loved her voice. So I think he really loved producing the Honeys, and he loved producing Spring. That was really sweet to hear her sing with him.
Those three songs together, The Night Was So Young, I'll Bet He's Nice, and Let's Put Our Hearts Together, forget about it.
Just beyond. Yeah.
We did skip over Honkin' Down the Gosh Darn Highway. I cannot hear that and not laugh. Funniest fucking song.
It is the funniest goddamn song because you just imagine, a Warner Brothers cartoon or something, and they go real fast and they kind of skid out and they go, and you picture honking, and then and Al's vocal, when I first heard Dennis's background, it's like the backgrounds are really far back. They're very like, in the distance sounding. And you just heard this like, honk, honk, honk another highway. We would laugh his and it's just like, I love it so fucking much. It is so delicious.
Yeah.
And that, and the fact that that's the background. Honk, honk, honking down the highway. It's just so great.
It's kind of disarming because it goes from honking down the highway to ding dang. So you're at this point thinking it's almost like a comedy record.
Right.
Then it goes into Solar System, Night Was So Young, I'll Bet He's Nice, Let's Put Our Hearts Together. Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. And
right. It's really disarming.
So it's disarming, but it's delicious,
Yeah, it is.
But Solar System is my favorite on the album.
And this is like a hard dividing point in the Beach Boys discography because this is a peak to me. I know it's your all-time favorite. It's not my all-time favorite, but still I think that after Love You, something was lost that was never regained. Because once we hit MIU, to me, it always has been a different band. From 78 forward, it's a different band.
Yeah, for sure.
So after Love You comes Adult Child, which was completed but left unreleased, which also is brilliant and has Still I Dream of It. Oh my God, what a masterwork that song is. I want to move on to the Brian Wilson solo record. This is interesting to me because this is directly preceding your career. So I'm guessing there's got to be some kind of symbiosis about what happened with the initial part of your dad's solo career and you taking flight, right? So what Andy Paley, the great and unfortunately passed away recently, Andy Paley said about the self-titled Brian Wilson record is anything good we got out of those sessions was done totally on stolen time. Which is, of course, a remark about Landy.
Yeah.
So Landy would leave and they'd scramble to get together and put stuff together when he wasn't around because he would always be trying to interject himself into everything. So talk to me. Were you around the sessions?
No.
Okay.
I was not around because we weren't allowed to see Dad. So it was a very, very painful thing. And it was like, when I heard this record, it was that much more emotional because I wasn't allowed to see him. And I think that Dad was too emotional to see Wendy and I. And also it was for Landy's reasons of just alienating him from everyone and wanting complete control. Cause I think he was the ultimate control freak, Dr. Landy. But Dad had this trust in him. And I kept saying to myself, well, fuck, Dad's getting something out of it. But I refuse to acknowledge any creative part that Landy would claim or take in this. I just don't acknowledge it at all. And I still don't. This album, when I heard it, I wept like a baby the entire time and could not get over it. I think it's brilliant. One for the Boys is enough to send me, I just don't know what to say about that. I mean, Our Prayer and One for the Boys. Yeah. Our Prayer is, to me, the prettiest thing that Daddy's ever composed. End of story.
Have you heard the rehearsal tape for that?
I think so.
There's a rehearsal tape where they've all taken LSD and your dad asks them, do you guys feel any acid yet? And then somebody says, I feel great. Okay, 3, 4. And then they launch into it.
I haven't heard it.
I mean, it's a spiritual experience listening to them. Just
I don't know if you could send that to me. I'm on it. Thank you. I want to hear that. Love and Mercy, I thought was beautiful and really sweet, but it wasn't my favorite track on the record. And everyone, like when he goes and does live shows, he sings that one, but I'd rather him sing Let It Shine and Melt Away. Melt Away is probably Rio Grande and Melt Away are my two favorites.
Rio Grande's my favorite. Yeah, Rio Grande, something special.
Rio Grande is, to me, a ride through Disneyland.
Yeah, it really is.
That song, when I heard that song, I couldn't talk. I could barely breathe. I felt like he had written another Good Vibrations. I felt like he tapped into this very, very scary part in him. First it's like Western feeling to me because he always loved the cowboys, the Indians, ding, 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 the banjo, right? Okay, you got that vibe. And then all of a sudden, here comes this like cloud explosion. And then when he hit, whoa, oh yeah.
That's the best moment of the song.
I literally couldn't believe my ears. And then he brought this like 50s, 60s harmony answer, follow up to that moment. I got a girl, don't find, whatever, the words,
The
right
river's deep and the river's so wide.
Right. Ugh, the songwriting, fuck. It's just so incredible. And those harmonies right there. And then it would take another turn where it was like The Wizard of Oz in Disneyland. That's what it's like. It's like you're in Kansas and here comes the hurricane. And it got that scary, has that scary vibe too.
Yeah, it's got the original Smile tapes, that vibe that you and I touched on.
That's it.
And I know it was written in conjunction with your dad and Paley. I mean, Andy, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know if you've heard the Paley sessions. Have you heard that stuff?
I haven't.
Okay, so, and this is just one guy's opinion, but I've listened to everything that your dad has ever done, released and unreleased that I could find. The Paley sessions were post-Landy, pre-Melinda. Okay, so it's that pocket, and it's a slew of material. It's dozens of songs. And it was kind of right around the time you did Bells of Badness with Rob.
Yep.
And it's the last time that I felt he walked into a studio and was on fire. It was unfortunately shit canned because of, I don't want to say it outright, but it rhymes with Schmulalinda. A certain force in the Beach Boys universe didn't want that, released that into the world. Instead, wanted things to go in a different direction.
You have to send it to me because I think there's a big part of me that just hasn't listened to this stuff after his solo record because it was too painful for me.
Why is that?
Because it just conjures up too much emotion. It's like I'm afraid to listen to it, because music is very powerful in my universe, and it just brings up feelings and stuff. There was such a disconnect during these last 25 years, such a disconnect, and spending time with him, but very little, and not fully being able to have access to him and be with him was very hard for me and Wendy, and anything associated with these last 2 decades or 3 decades, I just didn't want to listen to because I just felt mad.
So not having to do with Landy, you mean post Landy?
Yeah, like after Landy, Joe Thomas stuff, and like all that, just everything, even Lucky Old Son, I never even listened to. I never listened to it.
Yeah.
And I admit that, but I think it's just kind of me probably being afraid to listen to more of his expression and what was in him.
I think the Paley sessions was the last time that your dad was expressing his innermost feelings and his soul in a recording studio. Because Joe Thomas is the wrong person to be paired up with your dad. Adult contemporary is not the right place for your dad.
May he rest, but I wasn't into it. Back to Dad's solo album, Melt Away was gorgeous.
And Baby Let Your Hair Go Long's like Caroline No.
Baby Let Your Hair Go Long was, I went, whoa, this is a little, like, kind of acid flashbacky.
Yeah.
It's a little strange, that song.
It is. Oddly, whenever I hear that song, I think of China's Hair from 1990.
Yeah, he's got a thing for long hair.
Yeah, he does. For whatever reason, when women cut their hair, he equates that with loss of innocence.
I know. He's fixated on long hair. But Nighttime used to make me laugh.
How come? The melody?
I don't know, like, it's the right time from me. Like, I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
The right time from me. I don't know why that made me laugh. Wendy and I used to laugh at that. Very cute. I wouldn't have cared if the whole record was Rio Grande.
I know. And, Lenny Warren, how do you pronounce his last name? Warrenker?
Warrenker.
Okay. So he apparently wanted the whole record to be like Smile. He was pushing for just a purely experimental record and would have been thrilled if that was the case. And so would I have. I mean, you know, but the way that it ends, also the whole thing of Brian's back, I don't think your dad, post 60s has ever looked better than he did in 88. He looked fabulous. The picture of him on the record, oh my Lord.
Just so handsome and vibrant and everything. I mean, I just couldn't believe how gorgeous.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Amazing. So handsome.
I don't mind the synthesizers on this record because latterly it's kind of been, slightly denounced because it's synth heavy, but it never took away from me. I've always loved this record.
Yeah, it didn't take away from me too.
And by the way, it was the same month that this came out, that Kokomo came out.
I can't believe that. That's a trip.
Are you a fan of Kokomo?
I do like Kokomo. I mean, like, I liked Carl's part. I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of Kokomo. I liked it.
I can't deal. I'm sorry. I apologize. I know.
I mean, I'm trying to be nice. I just don't like, it's not my favorite ever. I thought it was interesting and different, but not really Beach Boy, except when he came to Aruba, Jamaica, we want to take you. And then Carl's great vocal. That's it.
Yeah.
But other than that, I wasn't really a big fan.
Yeah, Carl is beyond reproach. Okay, the final quote here.
Yeah.
And you have to guess who it's attributed to. The sound was so specific and warm and fresh and authentic that it kind of blew our minds. We were taking bong loads, so we were pretty fucking stoned, but still.
That was me, probably.
That was you. Okay, so was there anything about what your dad was going through with that first solo record that you knew about, or, anything leading up to Wilson Phillips that set a fire under your butt in your own impending ascent to the top of the pop mountain?
Well, like we knew that because we were separated from him with Landy, that we wanted to write a song for him and about him. But the first record, it was like very experimental in terms of songwriting. We were writing with Glenn and just trying to like come up with like at least a few hits. And we had some songs that were written, and then SBK signed us after we had already written some songs, but we didn't have a record deal. So we started writing more, and then we were also listening to outside songs, and we did Impulsive, written by Cliff Magnus and Steve Kipner, who wrote Physical, for Olivia Newton-John, and they were great. And Impulsive was a perfect song for us, and Next to You, some good writers on that. And it wasn't until the second record, the first record, everything was going by so fast, 4 years writing and recording, and then a whirlwind for the year. And then they were like, you got to do a follow-up, and you better make it great. So it was the pressure of the record company. And then also we were 19, so it was, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 22 years old. Then we got into therapy, like major therapy, and we started going backwards in our past. And then we started writing about our past and a lot of demons that we had.
For Shadows and Light.
Right, Shadows and Light. And so that was a heavy record, beautiful album. But we decided to write a song about Dad because we were frustrated that we couldn't see him, and that we were like thinking like from like Landy's point of view, how can we be like enemies when I wanted the lyric to be when we're really flesh and blood, but we did only flesh and blood. I still disagree with that lyric. But what does it take to make your heart bleed? Daddy, aren't we enough? So we were reaching out to Dad through that song, Flesh and Blood. Like, you can get through, there's nothing stopping you from getting to us. Nothing can take away the fact that we're only flesh and blood. Like, nothing's ever going to divide us, that we are your blood. It doesn't matter who's in the picture, whether it's Landy or someone else. We're here for you and we love you. And the fucking funniest reaction was from Dad. So years later, he told us, I followed you on the charts every week. He followed Wilson Phillips. He loves our sound. And I said to him, but Dad, what did you think of Flesh and Blood? And he goes, well, you really love me, or you think I'm just like a piece of meat? Like a fucking steak or something. You really love me, or you just think of me as a piece of meat? It's like, what the fuck? So great. Like,
it's always the moments you think are going to be the breakthrough moments that wind up disappointing.
Like the tender, he's going to say something tender, and he throws in something really funny like that. And then when he heard, he loved our version of Our Prayer. He goes, you sing it better than the Beach Boys. And I said, no, we don't, Dad. He goes, yes, you do. I was like, okay. Yeah.
What do you do Our Prayer on?
On A Christmas in Harmony. You've never heard our version?
I don't think I don't remember. I got to check that out immediately.
Oh, you have to listen to our version. So Rob, because he did the dedicated album, we had him produce the Christmas album. Glenn produced a couple tracks and Rob too. But Rob took the vocals and gave us all the arrangements for Our Prayer. So we went in the studio and we did tons of tracks, and there was no click track. It was all a man-made click track because it was slower, faster. And he was trying to replicate it, but it is a fantastic version. Although the mix, I wish I could go back and remix it. I would just take down China's vocal a tiny bit in certain areas. The blend wasn't exactly right, but whoa, whoa, whoa.
The chorus of at least the early part of your career, when they had you on that fast track money machine kind of thing with SBK. Yeah. So in thinking about it from 30,000 feet, it just, in a roundabout way, like the music that you wound up making as a result of soaking in all that inspiration throughout your whole life from your mom and dad, that wound up making you so successful that it drove you crazy, which landed you in therapy, which I'm assuming set you on the road to becoming obviously a complete emotionally integrated person that's sitting in front of me today. So it's really funny how it all works out in the end, because it made you a complete human, right?
Yeah, it did. Therapy helped a lot. Drinking, hitting a low, and then becoming sober helped me a lot. Reuniting with my father helped me a lot. It was like full circle. And through music, we reunited. Bells of Madness, Fantasies Reality is the first time that I sang with him as an adult. And he paced the whole time in the studio, cried the whole time, couldn't stop crying. It was beautiful.
Was that a high point for you? Because that to me is something very special.
Very special because it was the first time in so many years, that I felt his love for me. The last time I felt that was probably in 9th grade when I had sang that song, after the play was done, and he had tears, because I made him cry. He didn't know that I could sing, really. So when I was in the studio, it was like he was so moved, and I think it's because there were so many years apart. I mean, this was like 1993, I believe, or 94. And it was the moment that we became connected again. And it was through that music. I'm very grateful to Rob Wasserman. He was such a sweet, sweet man. And just a very gentle, dear soul. And that is a very special album. And I'm honored to be on that and be a part of that. But it was had way more meaning than just that. It was the beginning of the healing of our relationship. And after that, I remember going to his house, the first house that he lived in LA there. And he said to me, I know I wasn't a good daddy to you. And I'm so grateful to your mom. And Carnie, you have the most beautiful face I've ever seen. And I remember these words, but he just apologized. He said, I just couldn't do it. And thank God for your mother. That was the healing moment for me. All the therapy that I had, I wasn't even sober at that time.
This episode is brought to you in part by Bespoke LA. Located in the Fairfax district of Los Angeles, Bespoke LA is the modern podcaster's dream come true. It's got 2 podcast pods available. One with audio only, and the other with both audio and video. Just think, you can start your own podcast tomorrow without investing a single penny in equipment. What, you don't have experience editing? Don't even sweat it. For an additional fee, Bespoke LA can edit your podcast. Or not, it's entirely up to you. Rates start at $75 an hour with discounts if you book 4 sessions at once. Go to bespokela.com/podcast. That's BSPOKELA.com/podcast for more information or to book your time today. And be sure to tell them that Dave sent you for a one-time 25% discount. When did you get sober?
I got sober right before I got pregnant with Lola. So that was 2004.
Okay.
August 5th, 2004.
So you have 20 years now. Wow.
I do, from a drink, but then 5 years ago, I renewed an Ambien prescription twice, and I decided to change my date.
Okay. So
I really am coming up on 5 years, and my sobriety date is December 28th, the day that Dennis passed away.
Wow.
But I do, really remember that, that was the beginning of the healing with him, was him sort of finally saying, I'm so sorry, and me saying to him, I forgive you. I forgive you. He needed to hear that. It's so important because, in my program, when I make amends, I am not supposed to worry about whether someone says, oh, I forgive you or not. It's all about me cleaning the house and saying, I was wrong. I did this. I'm so sorry if it hurt you, made you uncomfortable, made you sad, whatever it did. I apologize for that. I wish I could take it back, but I can't. And I apologize. And it needs to stop there. No response. I can't wait for a response. But I needed Dad to hear from me, it's okay. You did the best you could. And I think that there was something that happened where he really forgave himself. He really forgave himself because he did not want to see Wendy and I for a long time because of his own guilt.
Right.
So having that healing with him and having this relationship with him now is everything I could ever want. I can't get back anything I didn't get. I can't get anything I didn't get. I can't take back things. I can't go back in time, because he was going through all his shit. My mom was too, and everybody was, and it was the times. But I think that now he's always kind of been stuck mentally with people, sort of hung up on certain people, still repeats talking about the same people over and over. And because he does love them and he does feel for them. And I have to give him that grace that he's never going to let go of certain things. It's in his body, mind, heart, and soul, and it will be there forever. And I do know that I know him very well. I have always had a connection to him, with him, and a lot of it is through music and audio stuff. I know that sounds weird, but when I go to his house, he loves me to sing to him. He tells me, your voice reminds me of Karen Carpenter. I love your voice. He says to me, I remember when you were in your crib and you had your finger in your mouth. I mean, I know how much Wendy and I mean to him. And I do know that he still feels so sad that he wishes he could change things, so he just has to be reminded that he's very loved. He's very, very loved. And he will go out of this world knowing what he's contributed. And trust me when I tell you, I say to him once in a while, do you really know the impact that you've had? Do you take that in? Do you really know what you've done? And he goes, every day. So that's a big thing for him to say. What goes through this man's mind every day? That's one of the things. He is so appreciative of everyone that has listened and loved and learned and grown from his music.
There is no question that the terrible day that happens, hopefully long in the future, where he passes, will be the most difficult passing away of somebody that I don't know. When Carl passed away, I cried. And I except for that experience when he played those Smile songs for me, I had never interacted with him, and I was crying. And for people I didn't know, there's maybe one other person, David Berman from the Silver Jews, who committed suicide. But other than that, I've never cried over a stranger's passing. But that horrible day, again, hopefully long in the future, I dread that day. I really dread it.
It's very hard to think about, and it's something that I've been thinking more about, because you see them get older and stuff, and it's such a part of life, but it's so not in our hands, and I've learned, it's okay to feel the feelings around it. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to anticipate, but it also reminds me of what I'm very good at, which is putting the cart before the horse, future tripping, thinking about the past and regret and, wanting to change things. And the message is celebrate who you love right now and every moment as much as you can. And I have had people in my life where something in me said, go spend time with them because they're not going to be here very long. And I didn't. And they're not anywhere near as meaningful. No one is, besides my mom and my dad and my family, But that's why it's very important for me to spend as much time with him now. And the circumstances in his life looks different now. And I'm able to do that now. And I am so fucking grateful. And I know he's so grateful. And I can pick up this phone and I can FaceTime him. And, he wasn't feeling well the other day. And he says, hi, Carnie. I love you, Carnie. And it's just that, just to be able to go over to his house whenever I feel like it now, I can do that. And his children and his family, his caretakers, I am so grateful for them and to them. And the woman that has been by his side, attached to his hip for 38 years, is Gloria. And Gloria is his savior. Gloria is his true savior. She's his true savior. And I will always just be forever grateful for her. She knows him better than anyone.
Is he doing okay?
Yeah.
He's all right. Good.
He's okay. He's
Good.
okay. And, they talked about, they talk about dementia and this and that, but it's like there are days when they're like, we think he's reversing it, and then some days when he's just real quiet. But you know what? I personally have not really seen that. I've seen a little bit of sort of a mental decline, but I wouldn't even call it a decline. He's repeated himself for the last 30 years. He
Right.
talks about the same things over and over. That's
Yeah.
what he does. That's what he's always done, But I think that he's more sensitive as you get older. Your walking is more difficult, your breathing is more difficult, just signs of just aging, general signs, it's happening and we're seeing it, but he's so fucking strong. God, he's so strong. And, he loves his food. I call him, FaceTime, he's got his little bib on, and he's ready to eat his little steak. And
Yeah.
he asks me for my mac and cheese, or he wants my brownies, and I'll come make him some food and drop it off and come spend some time with him. And, now I find myself when I'm with him holding his hand for long periods of time and just sort of like my eyes we just lock eyes for 2 solid hours and we talk about music. We talk about family. He wants to know how's Marilyn, how's Wendy, how's Diane, I share things about Lola and Lucy. And it's hard because one time he said something to me that really made me feel sad. It made me realize that he's never going to change. Most people don't. But he said to me once, he goes, Carnie, you're too happy. See, a lot of stuff with him is like double meaning. He means the opposite of what he's saying. So I've learned to tone it down with him. He's very sensitive to energy. So I try to lift him up and be like funny and stuff. And he didn't like that because he would say, one time he said, you're too happy. It scared him because he saw the joy in me. And when he saw that joy, he felt the joy. And it was so overwhelming for him that he couldn't handle it. So his reaction is, don't be so happy. Don't be so joyous, because it scared him. I think he sometimes gets scared to tap into and to feel happy, to feel okay. He's used to feeling scared about stuff, and it's hard for him sometimes to accept and invite that joy because he does feel deeper than I think we all realize.
No, I think everyone's cognizant of that. If you're a true fan, if you've ever heard their music, actually,
Yeah.
he's a born empath.
Yeah.
To me, he's one of the people at the top of the mountain who just deserve to be happy. They've given their nervous systems over to the world because of a talent that they were born with. And, it was out of their control. It's not like people who move out to LA with a dream to accomplish certain things or to, they have ambition. Your dad just had an innate God-given talent. That's something that was seemingly not even asked for. It's not like you even work towards something like that. You're just born with it.
Yeah.
And I hope that really for the rest of his days, he experiences as much pure joy as is humanly possible. And I'm just so glad you came out of all of this, a lot of insanity in your upbringing, and you came out of it a force of nature, but I'm not detecting any anger that you were talking about before. You seem really at peace with yourself and with the world around you. It makes me very happy to know that. It really does.
That's true. But there's also very, very, very deep pain.
Yeah.
And anger, no. I mean, there's some angry about certain things, certain people, the way they behaved, absolutely. But more empathy for people that just didn't have the ability to be kind, and people that, were just so wrapped up in their own jealousy and intimidation that they just couldn't do the right thing. And that is the hard part for me. But is there anger around it? No, because that is called resentment, and that will lead me to drugs and alcohol.
Right.
That I can't do. So I've done a lot of work around this. But is there sadness? Oh, there's a fuck ton of sadness. Mm-hmm. There's a fuck ton of sadness. And the sadness manifests in different ways. It used to be abusing food, drugs and alcohol, and food, but now like a bagel and a croissant is really significant for me and really like powerful for me. And it like messes my life up. I admit giving the power to, like alcohol, I gave the power to the food. And I don't do that anymore. And it's really weird. It's really weird. So it's like, what do I do? So I bake, I give to people, I connect with people. And I do think that it's time to get creative again and, venture into new projects and everything and just keep reaching my hand out for people that, suffer in different ways, whether it's mental illness or whether it's weight or motherhood or alcoholism, any of that stuff, just to keep on connecting. And that's the point. Because I do think that music is the bridge for all of it. So thank God for music. Thank God for Dad's music. Thank God for the fans and the listeners. I mean, I'm very grateful. I just stay grateful every day. You know about gratitude. Gratitude's everything.
Yeah, but it doesn't come naturally to me. I get down on my knees every day and I have to drum up a list if I can't grab it. And I will say that today being the 1 month anniversary of my mom's passing, that, when the day comes when you have to cross that bridge, that, I could never conceive in my head. It seemed impossible to go through something like that and remain sane. I had 13 and a half years clean and sober, then had to go through myriad medical things. I had kidney cancer, 2 neck surgeries. I almost bled to death and needed a double blood transfusion. And I lost my time. And I have about 10 months now. And I went through the whole process with my mom completely clean. I administered morphine to her, and it didn't even cross my mind to go there. The pain is surreal, how horrifying it is. It's inconceivable to experience it. It really is like on a whole other level, but there is a joy that I've experienced in knowing that I handled it. I got through it. And so there was a certain glee that came with that. Like, I can't believe I passed that test. Yeah. You know about those tests too. I mean, They come all the time. They're not necessarily as intense as a parent's death, but no matter what and no matter when, you'll be all right.
I know. And I feel the love and support around me. I appreciate you saying that very much. And I will. It's not something that I look forward to. I mean, I anticipate it, and it's really scary, really scary. My sister and I are very sensitive, and we're very, very connected and locked. But it'll be what it will be, and we will get through it.
Do you have any actual concrete plans to get back into recording music right now?
Well, Lola, she's doing American Idol, and that's all I can say. And she is starting to write songs, which is incredible. And she's a hell of a singer. Sings any one of us under the table. She's great. She really has a gift. And I love sending my dad and my mom videos of her singing. Her favorite song is Don't Worry, Baby.
Nice.
Yeah. And Lucy's is in my room. My daughter Lucy is in my room. And Lucy is very musical as well. More like producer, like her ear is just incredible. So, Lola's continuing to perform with us. And Lucy, we'll see what happens with her. So I think I would love to record something with Lola, but I think there might be some songwriting that has been brewing in me for a while, and I just have to have the courage to do it. And I just did an interview with Billy Corgan, and he was like, I'm like actually challenging you to go to the piano and start writing again. Because I had told him that I have never written a song from beginning to end by myself.
Really?
Oh, I never have.
I can't believe that.
I know. I haven't. So I would love to do that. And maybe, who knows, maybe this is the year.
I certainly hope so. That's amazing to think of. Yeah. And by the way, the record, The Wilsons, is absolutely amazing. That one, I don't know why that one is not front and center in people's consciousness. It really is loaded with great songs. What is your favorite? Is Shadows and Light the one that you're most proud of?
No, I'm proud of all of them. I can't pick a favorite. There's no way. No way. It's funny. I'm looking at a platinum album of Shadows and Light right now, right next to me.
Nice.
I have all my records on my wall. Not all of them, but a lot of them. There's tons of them around me. I love the Wilsons. I love that record. I just love it. I love that we went for it. We worked with, Dad and Dave Stewart and really kind of pushed ourselves to just break out a lot of guitars. We collaborated with Cliff Magnus and just some great, great people. That's a killer album. People don't know it. They don't know it. To me, I love Goddess's Revival. I love Miracle and the stuff we did with Dave, Candy. And I think that's a record that people need to find and listen to, because there's some really beautiful moments with Wendy and Daddy and I. And I also love on my Lullaby album, You Are So Beautiful with Dad. Mm-hmm. That is really, really touching. And that was another moment. Lola was 8 months old and we went in the studio and I loved his ideas. And it was so spontaneous. It was like he just knew what to do. And he started it out with his ooze. And I was like, what? It was so surreal recording that with him. But he was so present that day in the studio. It was great.
I can't wait to hear what you come up with, because I know, what's the last record you put out?
I think it was the Christmas album.
Okay.
It's a long time ago.
It's been a while, yeah. I think you've got a hell of a lot to say. Yeah. I think it's about time you said it.
Yeah.
All right, that about does it. Please keep in mind this is entirely how I support my wife and my 6-year-old son, so don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not supporting Discograffiti. Become a member today by visiting patreon.com/Discograffiti. Stay tuned, because next week we've got Lenny Kaye and Dennis Dyken on board to discuss the Beach Boys' classic fourth album, Little Deuce Coupe. Okay, here's the week up ahead. This Sunday, our weekly show within a show, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast, drops for our Patreon's private tier. These are real people with talent and a burning fire deep inside, just like you and I. Then come Monday, the major tier gets a two-headed beast for the Beach Boys' third album, Surfer Girl. Both producer-songwriter Russ Titleman, who wrote Guess I'm Dumb, was Brian Wilson's pal and confidant, and produced all the classic 1970s Randy Newman LPs and Brian Wilson's first solo album, and musician Jason Faulkner, not only Beck's guitarist, but he of the amazing Jellyfish, too. Both of these luminaries will be hashing it out on the Beach Boys' classic third LP, Surfer Girl. There'll be a short sneak peek running publicly for free, but the entirety of the show will only be accessible on the major tier of our Patreon. Don't miss it, or you'll only be getting part of the story. And then on Wednesday, the Lieutenant tier gets their early release, ad-free, super extended director's cut of the Lenny Kaye and Dennis Dyken Little Deuce Coupe podcast. It's the episode as it was truly intended to be heard, with all the essentials left intact. And then come Friday, everybody else gets to join in on the action. A heartfelt Discograffiti thanks goes out to my beautiful son Mason, Carnie Wilson, Rudy Fishman, Becky Boyd, Jay Schultz, Bespoke LA, my mom, my dad, Joe Kennedy for that killer new theme song, my incredibly loyal fans, and especially the entire Patreon community, the Soldiers of Sound. I love every last one of you, and this show would not exist without you, my friends. Speaking of friends, it's high time for some new ones. They're in our Facebook group, Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound. That's the best way to find out what's coming up on the show, but there's a hell of a lot more. You get recaps of the day in music history, the ability to pitch questions to guests, polls that put you in the driver's seat on guest and band decisions, access to a thriving creative hub if you're looking for a collaborator, and much, much more. So make sure you don't miss out. You can find the link to the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound Facebook page right there in the show notes. And if you don't mess with the Zuck, no sweat. Just email me at info@discograffiti.com and I'll keep you in the loop. So now that it's done and you want more, another way to dive even deeper into classic rock and roll from the 1960s is to leap headfirst into the Righteous Brothers Bill Medley interview, that's 181 and 182, my interview with the Free Design, that's 160 to 162, my epic interview with the Mamas and Papas Michelle Phillips, that's 141 to 159, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, that's 137, my 12-hour interview with Terry Kirkman and Jules Alexander from the Association, that's 109 to 113, Vashti Bunyan reading her entire output, that's 103 to 104, Sergio Diaz from Os Mutantes, that's 86 and 87, Bert Summer, that's 83 and 84, Sweetwater is episode 79, a tribute to David Crosby, 77 and 78, Andrew Tuttle rates the Monks, 74, Jim Florentine on Black Sabbath is 64 to 68. Lou Barlow on the Zombies is 59 and 60. Marvin Gaye biographer David Ritz rates Marvin Gaye, that's 45 to 47. Blind Faith is 43. Anthony Fantano rates the Velvet Underground is 32 and 33. Bob Forrest rates the band is 25 and 27. Monkees manager Andrew Sandoval rates the Monkees, that's 22 and 23. Don Randy rates David Axelrod as 17. Badfinger is 16. The Bee Gees is 10 and 11. Sly and the Family Stone is 5, 6, and 7. And Pink Floyd is 1 and 2. And of course, be sure to mark your calendars, because next Friday, February 14th, we're coming at you with Little Deuce Coupe with Lenny Kaye and Dennis Dykin. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. And so, from now till then, don't let our youth go to waste, lads and ladies. It's Discograffiti!